Hi, my name is Lee. I have been a longtime patient of Dr. Osterhout. I was born sensitive, a sensitive person, and had sensitivities, food issues when I was a little kid. That I found out that a doctor who was pretty state of the art at that time was recommending food elimination when I was probably 4 or 5 years old. I know that I had issues as a kid with just touching dough for cookies. I would want to help my mom make sugar cookies at Christmas time, and I'd want to roll out the dough and handle the dough. I'd start handling the dough, and within a few minutes, my nose would just be running, and I'd be sneezing, and I couldn't do it. So I think I was really born with a lot of, food sensitivities for sure. Started seeing Dr. O in 2008. Someone I worked with recommended him for chiropractic, and I was having some back issues and some hip issues, so I started seeing him, and that was very beneficial for me. Saw him for a couple of years for that. And at that time we did some food testing, and really not a whole lot was going on. That was 2008 to 2010. 2010, my mom fell, and I spent 2 years trying to care for her while she was in a nursing home, on top of a job that was incredibly stressful, to say the very least. It was nonstop drama and intensity. My mom passed at the beginning of 2012, and a year later, at the end of 2013, I started having lots of health issues. I started going into a clinical depression. I had been on depression medication since I was 30. Started having anger outbursts, started having trouble sleeping, started waking up in terror. Started getting sick from foods that I didn't normally get sick from. I'd eat something, I'd have nausea, I'd have bloating, I'd have diarrhea. So I started having just an onslaught of health problems. I tend to be pretty intuitive, so I was picking up, what some of the things were going on. As I was nosediving into menopause for one thing, so I had to go on hormone therapy. I felt that I had food sensitivities, so I asked him if we could test for those, and I think it would be easier to make a list of the foods that I could eat than the foods I couldn't, because I was sensitive to everything. As I said, I had severe hormone issues. I'd wake up in terror. I couldn't sleep. I'd go to bed and I'd be itching all over. I'd have a rash. I'd have no idea what it was. It was all I could do sometimes to get out of bed because of the terror that I was feeling. And sleep issues, couldn't tolerate many foods. It was horrifying. And so I'm trying to work with Dr. O. We're just trying to get an idea of what's going on, because clearly I'm having severe food allergies and sensitivities. And he did lab work that didn't look normal. We started doing a 4-day rotation food plan to try to help my body recover, and had to eliminate foods for probably 4 to 6 weeks before I could even try them again. So it was minimal what I could actually eat. I wasn't holding nutrition. I was losing tons and tons of weight. At that point, I was at a pretty decent weight, and through that first couple year process, I ended up losing probably 60 pounds. Dr. O has been steadfast. He was the one consistent thing I could count on. And I totally appreciate that he's used his life to help other people, and that he's worked so hard to bring tools into the office that are state-of-the-art and cutting edge. We ended up finding out that I was being poisoned from the inside with unmeasurable levels of mercury, lead, and other heavy metals in my body. I knew my teeth were breaking down because periodically I'd go to the dentist. They'd have to pull what was left of a filling and then put a crown on my teeth. So we found out that the levels, the lab couldn't even measure the levels of mercury. I had hair analysis testing, which showed that. And then to back that up, my primary care did urine testing. Both those tests came back exactly the same, showing the exact same thing. And Dr. Osterhout was trying to give me supplements to help my body start to chelate some of the heavy metals, but I was so sensitive and my whole system was so haggard that I couldn't even tolerate a small, tiny little dose of vitamin C without getting sick. So I was in the fight for my life, but I knew I was in the right place. 14, I spent a good portion of that time just trying to get through the day while I was having the last of my toxic fillings pulled out of my mouth. I needed to do that to get them out because they were leaching mercury into my body on top of the lead that was already there, on top of the cobalt that was already there, on top of the silver that was already there. And we had to, so I had to get those out. Each time that happened, I was sick for days afterwards, and it put more mercury in my body. But physically, I couldn't tolerate a whole lot of foods. I wasn't getting nutrition from food, and we were just trying, step by step to just try to help my body cope with what was happening. What I know for sure now is that 7 years of a job that wasn't good for me and 2 years of taking care of my mom in a nursing home bombarded my system with so much stress that it set up an environment for me to be sicker, and I honestly think for me to be sicker longer. So Dr. Osterhout and I worked for a couple of years with supplements, what I could tolerate. The food rotation diet was very helpful because it helped my system start to recover a bit from all these sensitivities to foods. I was sensitive to everything, and I've always been sensitive to the environment. I worked in a plant care business for probably a year and a half, and then I also had my own business doing gardening for 5 years, and I tend chemicals from those jobs that could have also impacted my system. One of the big things I think that really helped prior to me going into detoxification were the Asira treatments that Dr. O has here, which are, again, state of the art, and something I personally just truly believe in. And I really think that helped helped my cells, and it helped remove things that were in my system that were all bombarding me. I called it the perfect storm, because it was like everything converged on me at once. The fillings breaking down, the hormones, the 7 years of the bad job, the 2 years of taking care of my mom, all the stress, being a sensitive person, relationship issues, all these things that impact your health. I've always been a holistic believer, and so that's why I'm here. So we spent those first couple years with the food plan, doing some supplements, doing the Asiras. In 2016, to start more of the intensive detoxification, we did a year of foot baths. At the end of the year, from the foot baths, when we did the hair analysis, which I did at the end of each year, I think the lead was almost completely gone out of my system. So the, foot baths pulled the lead out. So 2017, I started a long protocol of far infrared saunas, which saved my life to me. So to say thank you just feels so slight that it's like I would not be here. I wouldn't be here talking about this if it wasn't for Dr. Osterhout Vitale. I wouldn't be here. It's simple. I have a life because of this. So started the detoxification treatments, the infrared sauna. You couldn't measure how high the mercury and lead were in my system, in my brain cells, in my bones, in my tissues. So my whole being is suffering. I could not work. I couldn't think straight. My mind didn't work right. I'd come to see Dr. Osterhout and I'd feel cared about. And I knew I was in the right place. We had to work together to try to figure out what we needed to do, and so the infrared saunas started to pull the mercury out. I was so environmentally sensitive that just driving my car for 15 minutes, like to the store, like everybody does, I'd pull in the parking lot and I'd have to sit there, trying not to vomit. I felt like that all the time. I couldn't work, I could hardly go anywhere. I'd go into a big box store like a Target, and just the smells of the products would completely overwhelm me. I was sensitive to all kinds of smells, candles, things. I couldn't drink coffee, I couldn't drink tea, I just drank water. It was a nightmare. It was a nightmare, but I knew it was in the right place. I was in the right place. So come up to 2021, go through the hair analysis at the end of 2020, and 2021, doctor and I look at the results, half the mercury's gone. And I'm like, oh my God, you know. And I think, you know, that was a huge, huge progress. You know, after not knowing how long it was going to take with how sick I was and how many toxins were in my body, how environmentally sensitive, the impact, the things that I'd been exposed to, things we understood, things we didn't. And so a few weeks after that great news, I started waking up every day with vertigo. I would see him, I think, almost every single week, trying to help manage these, you know, vertigo points. And finally, after I got some of the dental work done in the summer, the vertigo finally disappeared as fast as it showed up. So at that point, I was able to restart the saunas. This is what happens when you have health issues, is it's not a linear process. It's a process. It's not linear. It's, you know, and you're constantly trying to learn and figure out what you need to do. So it was that year that I really cognitively started to feel better, because of course half the mercury was gone, the lead was gone. And so I enrolled in a Master Gardener program, and finally started to feel like a human being again. I didn't have a life, I didn't feel like a person, I just felt like an illness. And I felt like an illness that people did not believe. Some of my family members, people didn't believe what I had was real. So that made it even more challenging. But again, Dr. Osterhout was always there. He was always consistent and helpful and supportive and working together, because I was sick for 9 years. You know, you can't get back that chunk of your life. So 2020, you know, fast forward of saunas, and, you know, really the food sensitivities really decreased. The environmental sensitivities were starting to decrease. Really the food sensitivities, I would say, decreased first. The environmental ones were still pretty challenging up until I got more of the mercury out. So beginning of 2023, came in, had the hair analysis in December of that year, mercury gone. I fell off my chair onto the floor. I'm okay, I've been through more than that. You know, and it was just, you know, vitality saved my life. Vitality saved my life. I have a life today because of vitality. It's like, and I think that it's so important that you pay attention to your body, that you pay attention to your intuition, that you pay attention to things. And I never felt I got relief from mainstream because they weren't looking for the root solution to the problem. I had asthma and was taking medication that was making me sick when I was in my 20s. I just feel that, you know, this is the way to go for me for sure. And I think I can't imagine who it wouldn't benefit. So I had to gradually and very intentionally and very slowly start to rebuild the life at age 60 after being sick for 9 years. But the Osiris, the saunas, the supplements, the chiropractic treatment, all these different approaches that no other place has other than vitality. You know, now I have a life that's meaningful. I have a job that I specifically turned down, my old job, and took a job that's low stress. And then I teach art, and I do art, and I'm a nature lover, I'm a master gardener, and you know, there's really no way to process all of this. But I just knew I came to the right place. I thought very highly of Dr. Osterhout when I saw him for chiropractic, and you know, together, I'm here because of this. There was nothing else that could cure this. There's no pill you can take to get mercury out of your brain. You know, it's horrifying. It's hard to talk about. But, you know, paying attention to, you know, your system, if you're getting sick, paying attention to what your body's telling you. And, you know, I still have things to learn. I'm still working on hormones and weight, and, you know, but I'm alive. I have a life that's meaningful. I have a life that's fulfilling. I have a life that's simple and meaningful to me. And I'm so thankful, you know, to have been led in this direction so that I could have my life back.